Thank you, Mr. Madhu, and thank you all. Wonderful. So nice to be here on this day. And I must say, your introductions were very short and sweet. Otherwise, I go on listening to such long speeches. So I'm supposed to start only at 7:20. I'm already here at 7:05. So what I'm here this afternoon, this evening, is to kind of give you a slightly different spin on Indian cinema. You know, many of you are from the corporate industry, established entrepreneurs, and I think it's very important in this, the 100th year of Indian cinema, to just have a look at what is this industry that we are talking about, and where are we in a more global position. First of all, we must understand that when we celebrate the 100 years of Indian cinema, we are also celebrating the 100 years of Pakistani cinema, Sri Lankan cinema, Nepali cinema, Burmese cinema, Bhutani cinema, or Maldivian cinema. Because when Raja Harishchandra was made in 1913, there was no India. It was British India. So wherever I go, I tell my Pakistani friends, please go ahead and celebrate the 100 years of Pakistani cinema. Also this year, Dadasaheb Phalke belongs to the South Asian subcontinent. But what is interesting is about the fact that Dadasaheb Phalke comes in 1913. You see, it's very important to understand the year that these people come in. Cinema, I need to go back a little further. I need to go back to 1895, when the first film was shown in Europe and in America by the Lumiere brothers. You see, when the first film was shown in New York City in 1895, there were traffic jams on the road. There were skyscrapers. The company called Otis had patented their automatic elevator. Coca-Cola was introduced in 1895, sorry. The first aircraft was flying, and an experimental aircraft was flying at that time. So industrialization, modernity, urbanization had set in completely, and then cinema arrives. You see, it's a very important thing to note that cinema arrives in the Western world to deliver the goods of capitalism, the virtues of free enterprise, and the benefits of healthy competition. Cinema comes as the bridesmaid of capitalism into these worlds. When it comes to India, in 1896, when the first film was shown at the Watson's Hotel in Mumbai, there was no electricity. Forget skyscrapers and forget traffic jams. Forget automobiles on the road. They had to run a generator to make that projector work. And by 1897, there were so many cameras already in India, from England and from France. People were shooting. In 1913, Dadasaheb Phalke makes his first film. By the time, many filmmakers are already making films in this country. But yet, we didn't have anything like an automobile industry. We didn't have skyscrapers, we didn't have traffic jam, we didn't even have a steel factory. So what happens is, this is an unusual phenomenon, that the exhibition of modernity comes first, urbanization comes later. People saw traffic and cars in the movies first, and then they saw it on the streets. People saw skyscrapers in the movies, and then they saw it in the streets. People saw aircrafts in the movies, and then it happened. So it's a complete reverse process when it comes to India. So cinema, unfortunately, because of this, it had to pay the price of being the pioneers in the industry. In fact, filmmakers are the first industrialists in India, and none of them had any education, none of them had any training, none of them had any kind of technical skill. They just picked it on the fly. What is also important is that when cinema arrives in 1913, 1914 is also the year when Gandhi is coming to India. The first Indian National Congress is being held under the leadership of Gokhale. Gandhiji joins the national movement, and the freedom movement is launched at that time. The First World War starts in 1914. Right, the world is in turmoil, and India is part of a huge freedom movement. So, the arrival of cinema and a democratic freedom movement is simultaneous. Cinema automatically becomes the voice of democracy, the voice of the people, and part of popular culture. Now what happens because of that is a very sad thing. And that is, somehow cinema is not seen as a fine art. as an art which needs to be learnt, as an art which needs to be cultured. You've got to be trained. No, nobody thought it necessary. So when we became independent and the first IITs were set up in 1955, they had courses in paper technology and naval architecture and mechanical engineering. They didn't have film technology. They didn't care about film technology. The IITs began, the BITS, Pilani, everybody had it, but never thought about film technology. That this is something which is important to teach. Schools and colleges deliberately avoided teaching cinema. We have never read anything about films in our school books, and it is there all the time, staring into your face. We were deliberately not educated. And so what happens is, this pioneering industry becomes an underdog, becomes some kind of a cheap popular culture. In fact, the typical idiom would be, Kandavangalam padam pannittu irukanga. Nobody says Kandavangalam steal pannittu irukanga. Or Kandavangalam car, automobiles pannittu irukanga. Nobody says that. Only movies are cursed as Kandavangalam padam. So why should we teach this Kandavangalam? So when I go back into history, I see one peculiar problem here, and that is, because of the forces of democracy, the freedom movement and cinema, the cinematic space, namely the theatre, the cinema theatre, becomes the first space in this country which does not prescribe to any laws of caste, creed, community and religion. From the beginning, you sit in a cinema theatre, you don't know who the next person to you is. Whether he is an upper caste, lower caste, Muslim, Hindu, Catholic, Parsi, you didn't care. We all sat together. This never happened in any other art form in India. It never happened. Only people of certain communities and groups went. And so the cinema theatre was actually seen as a peculiar den of corruption. You see, last but not the least, after 1947, Indian cinema was the only space for popular culture in India. Right? And popular culture, anywhere in the world, thrives on rebels, thrives on protest, thrives on dissent. And India is a very peculiar country. When we become freedom, we actually inherited all the bad things of the British system. All the horrible systems of the British we inherited. We inherited a very corrupt political system. We inherited a very corrupt legal system and a very corrupt police system. They were all corrupt in the British time. And we inherited all of them, and we did not want to change it at all. Cinema was the only medium in India in which a politician, a lawyer, and a policeman, if they appear on the screen, they are villains. They must be bad. They must be beaten up. And they were saying the right thing. They were telling the right thing. Unless and until it is played by a hero, they were always bad. So now what happens is, cinema was always seen as the critique of anything called democracy. We were always criticizing the democratic systems and saying, we got to change, we got to change, we got to change. And our heroes and heroines were always about change towards a very ideal situation. And this was not tolerated by the government. In fact, we were having a discussion just before this, Mr. Shankar was telling, oh, these films are so vulgar, how can we watch this? Do you know, sir, in 1953-54, Mr. Madhu will bear me out on this, the Director General of All India Radio, Mr. Kheskar, he banned film songs on All India Radio because they were vulgar. Am I right?
Right.
In 1953-54, they were banned because they were vulgar. We are talking about vulgarity today. It was vulgar at that time. Then you know who benefited the most? Radio Ceylon. Radio Ceylon beamed our songs. The whole nation heard film songs on Radio Ceylon.
Binaka Geet Mala.
Binaka Geet Mala was a national anthem for us. Anyway, they cannot stop popular culture. They could not stop it. So what the government did, you see, they wanted to do something about Indian culture. They set up a Sangeet Natak Academy for dancers, musicians and theatre artists. They set up the Sahitya Academy for writers and poets. They set up the Lalit Kala Academy for painters and sculptors. They did not do a film academy. And instead, they set up a Patil Enquiry Committee to investigate into the misdoings of the Indian film industry. And if you must read this Patil Enquiry Committee, it is such a ridiculous moralist document. It talks about how can Raj Kapoor have affairs with Nargis when he's already married to. What are you talking? Is Raj Kapoor the first man to have an affair outside his marriage? But Raj Kapoor should not have. These are all bad people. They are all drunkards, they are all womanizers, they are all alcoholics. And there was a proposal left 2 years later in the Khosla Committee report to nationalize the Indian film industry. These are all bad people. We must nationalize it. And they were about, at that time the Indian film industry cost just 6 crores of rupees. The whole industry was only worth 6 crores. And the government said, let's put 10 crores and nationalize it. And there was an advisor, a woman called Marie Satan, a very strong Soviet collaborator. And she said, oh yes, the Soviet industry is nationalized. So why can't the Indian film industry be nationalized? It was almost going to be moved in the parliament. Until some secretary asked, okay, we will nationalize it, but who will write dialogues for Sivaji Ganesan? Which secretary is going to write it? They are difficult than a business for a good to do. And they dropped it. They left it. So you see the film industry starts here, in the post-independent India, as a truant industry. As a mischief-making industry. And the government deliberately avoided this place. Avoided cinema like a plague. And therefore what happened was, when I look back, and if in 1955, the IITs had set up a film technology department across the country, Indian film industry scenario would have been completely different. After all, they can set up a leather technology institute. I mean, do we need to teach how to make chappals? This is a nation of the finest leather craftsmen. You don't need an institute to teach leather technology. You don't need an institute to teach printing technology. But they were set up because of vested interests, of capitalist interests, who wanted these courses and they wanted designated students with degrees. Why would they not present degrees to filmmakers? Anyway, so what happened was, because of the complete neglect both by the government and by the capitalist sector, I will dare you to guess what is the turnover of Indian cinema. What is the turnover of Indian cinema today? We make 1,100 pictures every year, 13,000 cinema houses, about 1,400 recording studios across the country, 25 laboratories across the country. And what is the turnover?
$1 billion?
$1 billion is just about $1.2 billion. It's just 8,000 crores of rupees. 8,000 crores, that's all. One man called Raju swindled 10,000 crores. 10,000, one man. This neighborhood here, one guy got away with 1,27,000 crores. Just in this neighborhood. What is Indian cinema? The Reliance is worth 4,50,000 crores. The Indian cinema is a pipsqueak industry. It's really a Shundaka industry. And for this pipsqueak industry, we get 4 pages supplement every day. And we want to know what Khushbu wore yesterday and where is Asim today. We want to know that. We don't want to know what Mukesh Ambani is doing. So if we're talking about this crazy cinema, this is what it is. It somehow does not leave our imagination. It is so strong in our imagination, and we need to question why. Why are we not able to simply say, forget this movie industry, we don't really need it. Why do we need an 8,500 crore industry? It's nothing, it serves no purpose. At the end of the day, it serves no purpose, because when I teach the United States, and I look at any book on world cinema, there will probably be, out of a 500-page book, there will be 10 pages on Indian cinema. And we are the world's biggest film industry. We make the maximum number of films in this world. Right? And there will be 10 pages. And out of the 10 pages, 5 pages will be Satyajit Ray. and 5 pages will be Adur Gopalakrishnan, Shyam Benegal, Bollywood, and a little mention of Rajinikanth and Kamal Haasan somewhere. That's it. It's over. Indian cinema is over. So somewhere I feel it's all of us here. We are all morally responsible for this. That we grew up enjoying this film. You know, our hormones grew up because of these movies. We have become what we are because we identify with our cinemas. Because of our memories of whether it is Shivaji Ganeshan or MGR or Kamal Haasan or Rajinikanth or Raj Kapoor or, you know, Amitabh Bachchan. These are our memories. These are what we cherish. This is what we talk on an ordinary conversation. This is how we created a nation. In fact, I always say that cinema, you know, and the nation are so tied up together. That Indian nation, you know, we are an imagination. We are not a nation. We are a cinematic imagination. We live in our cinemas. You know, people in Madhya Pradesh know that there is a South Indian girl like Baijanti Mala. Acha, ye South ki hai. You know, and we see Amitabh Bachchan and say, oh, this fellow is went from North. We know the North because of Amitabh Bachchan, not because anything else. So cinema has actually united us in very, very powerful ways. And I will come to now a very, very important point, the city where we are. Why are we celebrating the city this week here? You see, when cinema developed alongside other industries, the Madras presidency was the biggest presidency. The Madras presidency was the most industrially developed presidency compared to the Bombay and the Calcutta presidencies. The Madras presidency had one of the most vibrant financial systems of the Chettiars. The banking systems here, the trading systems here were very advanced. So it was no wonder that industries, film industries, developed in Madras first. I am absolutely convinced that the Madras film industry is the Indian film industry. Bollywood or the Bombay film industry is the Hindi regional cinema industry. Madras industry also made Tamil films. There is also a Tamil cinema here. And I'll tell you why. Look at the people who produce films from here. You look at A.V. Mayappa Chettiar. You look at S.S. Vasan. You look at L.V. Prasad. You look at Nagi Reddy. You look at the great modern theatres. Sundaram. Yeah, Sundaram. You know, these guys were not Tamil filmmakers. When they made films in all languages as if it is part of a natural thing to do. If you come to my library, I will show you scripts of L.V. Prasad. They are all written in English. He never made English films. That English script was a template which he would give it to T. Prakash Rao or he would give it to one Malayalam producer and say, okay, make this. And they saw the English script and they transcreated, not translated, but transcreated a Telugu version or a Kannada version or a Hindi version. I mean, this is the Madras film industry here. It's a huge industry. This is the true national cinema here. Every possible actor in the 70s, they were all here. Whether you talk about Jitendra, Sunil Dutt, Salil Chowdhury, the recordists, you know, it's a fantastic film industry which had people from all castes, communities, nationalities, languages, all making movies here. And they never saw themselves as Tamil filmmakers. We also made Tamil films. It's another film industry. So, now that Tamil film industry also needs to be given attention. That's a very different kind of films. Parashakti, for example, is a Tamil cinema. It's a Tamil cinema. Whereas a film like Enga Vittu Pillai is a national cinema. It's not Tamil, it's just a Tamil title. But that film could be easily done as Ramoshyam or something else in any, it could go into any other language. So there is a formula to make a national film and a formula to make the Tamil film. The greatest formula maker for the national cinema was a chap called Santo Chinnappa Devar. Chinnappa Devar made the same film 10 times. The same film. It started with one MGR film with the elephant. He goes there, does Rajesh Khanna and elephant, comes back, Kamal Haasan and elephant, Goes back Amitabh and elephant. Comes back Rajini and elephant. Goes back then Bitul Chakravarti and elephant. The elephant is the hero. These are all parallel activities. A genius. I mean, now somebody will say, how stupid this fellow is. He was not stupid. He had sense. He had manufacturing sense. Then he was not educated. I mean, he looked like a complete vagabond, crackpot he looked like. But he was a genius, an absolute genius. And I'll give you a small incident about this. My father was one of the most important contributors to Indian cinema. My dad was the vice president of Eastman Kodak. And my father, Mr. Krishnan, was the first person to introduce color negative into this country. He taught people how to use color. And if we have color cinema today, it was because of the singular effort of my father, a great laboratory technician. And he had friends, everybody was friends with him because Kodak Krishnan, without Kodak Krishnan, nothing can happen. So he would meet Chinnappa Devar, and Chinnappa Devar, after seeing, Hati Mere Sati, he would ask my father, so Krishnan, eppadi irukku? My father, okay. Color video. How was the movie? What? Teva sir, this is a padama adella. In the Yani University, they'll make jokes like that. And they were said, Krishnan, in the film, you do only color. You must know what the audience is. He said, okay, tell me what is the audience about. You see, when people come to see movies, they come with whole families. Okay, from the 6-year-old to the 60-year-old. And I have to pay attention to everybody. So when there is a serious love scene going on, there's an elephant in the background. And the child will cry and the mother will say, the child will be watching the elephant and the parents will be watching this love scene. Or this crying scene, dramatic scene in the foreground. And the baby will be watching the elephant. And he was absolutely right. He was absolutely right. It happened to me many years later. I had my daughter, 1.5-year-old daughter, and I had gone to see a film called Betab. You know what the film Betab? With Sunny Deol and Amrita Singh. And it had this beautiful opening sequence, hero, heroine singing a song on a horseback, the dog, and Pomeranian dog, everything in the run. And my daughter, we were all watching this film. 10 minutes after that, the song is over, all the serious drama starts. And my daughter is saying, Appa, where is the horsey? I said, what horsey? That horsey, I want a horsey. I said, sorry, I can't get that horsey for you. And I want to go. In 10th minute of the film, she is crying on my lap. My wife sits next to me. You know what wives say? Out you go with the baby. I spent the rest of the movie in the corridor. At that time I prayed, why did this fellow not meet Chinnappa Devar? If he had met Chinnappa Devar, he would have put a horse somewhere in the background. I would have seen the movie, she would have seen the horse, but I would have been entertained. I lost the movie. Anyway, so the question is, these guys had interesting idea. They were ingenious people, and nobody went to didn't go to the film school to learn this. Right? But because of their rather, what I would say, feudalistic attitude, they were still feudal landlords in mind about their territory, their area. They never knew how to transcreate this feudal relationship into a modern industrial relationship. And that's where these institutes would have played a great role. To transform the minds of these people. That, Mr. Chinnappa Devar, you're actually worth much more than what you're getting paid for. Cinema is much more than what it is getting in this country. It's worth much more. I mean, can you believe in this day and age you get tickets for $10 in Satyam Cinema? For 10 rupees you can get idli in Sarana Bhavan, and you get to see Yendiran. Can you imagine in this day and age you have a rule like this? This is so absurd. Why do you reduce cinema to this? To say, what? Why don't we sell cars for 10,000 rupees? So this whole attitude that cinema has to be delivered cheap, has to be given. What is most important for me is that Indian cinema thrives because of one of the finest spectators in the world are here. They love cinema. Their identity is born because of cinema. They are what they are because of what they think about cinema. Cinema for them is their emotional software. It is their emotional software. They see a movie, they get enriched. When I go into the south at the time when Subramaniapuram was released, and I would travel to the colleges talking about cinema, You know, that song, Kangal Irandal, was the national anthem of all the college girls and boys. It was that thing that drove their adrenaline and their hormones. That song. Everybody was singing it. That was what their lifeblood was. And you know, it changed. Every year you'll have another song, another song. And these are things which circulate in our imagination. And somehow when we grow old, you know, we seem to have no regard for those memories. You know, we suddenly discard it as vulgar, as cheap. But you know, popular culture is always about a wonderful combination of the sacred and the profane. Popular culture has to be profane. Otherwise it cannot be profane. See, where you draw the limit is very important. Where you say this is the line. And I think we have to respect that popular culture because it allows the fundamental tenets of our constitution, which is the freedom of expression. And people in India really use it fully. They really love their cinema. We sell 4.2 billion tickets in this country, which means that average Indian citizen watches 4 films in the cinema theatres every year. 88% of our cinema theatres show Indian films, indigenous films. This does not happen in Sweden. This does not happen in Italy or in Germany. In all those so-called developed countries, 80% of the theatres show Hollywood films. 20% will show their local films. So they're in Germany or Sweden or Norway or Denmark or Finland. They see Hollywood. We are the only country where Indian films are shown and indigenous audiences exist.
How is it in China?
See, in China, it's a Chinese film industry. It's a completely government-run film industry. So you cannot do anything. They are forced to see Chinese films, and it's largely propagandist films that are made for their country. So they don't have any. Even their internet is completely taken over. Even their television is completely nationalized. So that's a completely different scenario. That's a totally centralized governmental system. But wherever there has been a free trade system across the world, Indian cinema dominates. Now, if only we had a good industry, if only the Tatas and the Birlas and the Amalgamations Group, and they had all taken Indian cinema seriously as a good capitalist venture, we would have been somewhere else today. And that's one of the precise reasons why I decided to give up filmmaking, in 2003, to enter into the film teaching business, the academy business. And you can see such a marked difference here, that when you go to the film industry and you see educated directors, educated actors, educated people, and they also understand popular culture, there is a marked change. The whole standard of cinema changes, completely changes. And that is so very important. I will just close my talk by saying that where are we going next from here? Where are we moving towards? That there must be a change here. There is no doubt that Indian cinema, Tamil cinema, Madras cinema must change. It must change. It cannot go on like this forever. At this moment, what has happened is, many people, all of you should know that the release strategies of a film have gone completely bizarre. There was a time, I remember when I was growing up as a young boy making films in Chennai around in 1982-83, there was a film called Kidake Pogum Rail, Bharati Raja film. The day it released, there was no posters on this. He just released it. Bharati Raja just put it in theatres and it was a super hit. There was no need for publicity, nothing. Today, if you don't spend, for a Tamil film, if you don't spend a minimum of 2 crores of rupees on publicity, you can forget your film. You can just forget it. Now what has happened is, partially because of rampant piracy, if a film has to succeed today, it has to hit at least, an ordinary Tamil film has to hit at least 120 theatres on the opening day. 120 screens on the opening day. A very ordinary film like say Soodhikavum or my student's film which is going to come out shortly, it's called Kalyana Samayal Sadhana. It has to touch 120 theatres. Out of the 900 theatres here, 900 screens in the city, in this country, in the state of Tamil Nadu. It has to touch 120. In those days, film like Hum Aapke Hain Kaun, they released in one theatre. Ek Duje Ke Liye, one theatre. That's it. And the public demand picked up, and it went to become a virus. One theatre. Today you can't do that. A film like Chennai Express releases in 3,600 theatres across the world. 3,600 theatres. It has to go on day one. And if you don't do that, you are not going to get anything in the box office. You've got to get the first weekend collection. Now what happens is, if you are insisting that every film should get a 120 theatre release, where is the space? Where is the space? So what has happened today is that this theatre business is now completely controlled by small mafia groups in the city. Very powerful mafia groups are sitting, and they will give you the allotment. If you don't get their allotted theatre, you are out. Because somebody has to streamline it. Somebody has to streamline these theatrical releases. And you are desperately dependent on this theatrical release. And then you have one gangster called Seema, he stops the film. Film is ready, theatres are ready, he doesn't allow Madras Cafe to be released. Another set of gangsters decide, no, we will not release this Talevai. So the situation is getting to become quite bizarre. That there are theatres, film producers with prints, and they don't get viewership. So what is the solution? The solution has to move out of the theatre. We need to get into it. It has to be more democratic. One of the wonderful suggestions given by Kamal Haasan, this is what crazy city of Chennai can do. When he did Vishwarupam, he said, I will go direct to home. I will get the film direct to your homes. Why should I go to this theatre at all? He was almost at the point of it, and the distributor said, no, don't do that. We will lose money. The theatres will lose money. He was willing to do that. But my friends, that's the future. In another 2-3 years, it will be direct to home. You pay for, some 1,000 rupees and you can get it at your home. And 10 of you can watch the film. Instead of going to Satyam and paying, 3,000 rupees, you sit here and watch it and finish the film. That's going to happen very, very soon. So the cyberspace is going to be the new theatre. The cyberspace. And once you enter into the cyberspace, hopefully, one of the things I am dreaming of, and I am trying to do it very discreetly to some of the big IT sectors, that the IT sector should take interest in the cinema. Not the industrial sector. It should move into the IT sector. And once they take it, once they move it into the net, once you move it into the mobile phone, once you move it into the iPad, and mobile, anything, any device, any device which can take live streaming video, that's going to be the future. And I think once that happens, we'll see a lot of changes. A lot of changes here. And the best change that will come is that everybody today in this audience feels that we are all capable of making films. It is not a magic at all. This camera is no more a piece of magic for me. Anybody with this little camera can make a movie. After all, there is a very, very big successful film made by another student of mine called Nadulu Konjam Pakkathu Kaanam, was shot with a little 5D camera. A small Canon 5D still camera. An entire feature film was shot. That's a huge success. It really doesn't matter, what camera you're shooting on. Today technology is so good. HD technology is so good. You can make films with anything. With mobile phones, you can make movies with. So that means, very simple, that is what movement started in 1913 with Dadasaheb Phalke, a freedom movement for Indian democracy and the first cinema. Today, 100 years later, the democracy is willing to make films. Everybody is a filmmaker. Now we need to go to the next step. Thank you very much.